So to pick back up where we left off, we had just set up everything in the tutorial up to the point of the blog blueprint. So we've set up our project layout. We have our application all set up. We've defined what the database is. We've worked with the initial blueprint and views. And remember, blueprints are like an overall collection of a set of views. So for example, up to this, we've gone through and created like the user logins and that kind of stuff, that portion of it, the blueprint. We're going to get to our blog blueprint here in just a little bit. We've worked through templates. Remember, templates are where all your HTML goes into for your web page. And with templates, you have the ability to do inheritance. So in our project, we had something like our login and our register. And we can see that extends our base HTML. If we go down to our base HTML, we can see how we had that set up for a generic base template going in there. So if the user's logged in, it shows the stuff across the screen. If it doesn't, we can take a real quick look at this. We hit play up here at the top. We should be able to see exactly where we left off. And of course, in here, remember that we had off and we have our off login. All right. So remember, when it first boots up, that's going to the home directory. We want to set it up to go to off because that's the only blueprint we've created so far. And that gives us a chance to log in. We have register and login. If we actually log in, remember that we changed the CSS for this particular template. And we did that inside our style sheet. So if we go to our style sheet, we grab that color, and remember that this has the ability for us to see the color right away. So this one here, and we can change that color dynamically. So all works really well. That's kind of where we left off with the rest of the tutorial. Now what we want to do is kind of go in and set up the blogs portion of it. So with the blog, I'm going to go ahead and get my side-by-side going again here. So give me a second to get that situated. Let's see here. Like that. And this one. Okay, let's get these more half and half here. Perfect. Okay, so the file that we're going to edit is in our Flask folder, and we're going to go to our blog.py. Now, blog.py doesn't exist, right? Because we have our auth.py. We need to create a new file that deals with our blueprint for blogs itself. So we're going to close that up. And we're going to go ahead and close this stuff up so there's no confusion on whatever we're working on here. Okay, so under Flaskr, remember Flaskr is the name of our application. We'll create a Python file, and this will be for blog. And inside blog, we're going to copy in these contents. We do want to go ahead and add that to our repository. Grab this, post over here. And so this is going to look very similar to what we did with auth. If we go over to auth, look how it looks very similar at the top. And remember, this is how we set up our pages. So these are our individual views. If we went to register, we get the register page, log in, log out, etc. We need specific pages that deal with the blog portion of our application. So the first thing we have set up is our blog, and we're going to name it blog. So we'll reference it in lowercase blog for all of our views going out, our URLs, etc. And inside of this one, we also need to update our init file. And in this init file, we have our create app, and under that we have our app Flaskr, and then down at the very bottom we have our import for auth. So we need to do the same thing for adding this in our blog. So we're going to add this little lines here, which adds in our blog. And one thing to note here is in this app add URL rule, anything that goes to slash now sends it to index. So what that means is instead of us loading our website and it immediately shows nothing there, we had to go to /auth in order to go somewhere. This is going to say from now on at the main root of our website, go ahead and send us to the index view. And we're going to set up that index view here in just a second. So let's tab that out. We have return app. We already have that once. Just need the one. And here and enter, fixes a little squiggly there. Okay. So now we need to set up that index page. So let's go back to our blog. And the first route we're going to set up here is our index. So let's go ahead and copy this content here. We'll look a little bit more about what that looks like. Okay, so again, this BP route at our slash gives us our index, and this is going to connect out to the database. We're going to execute a request to select information from the database, including the ID, the title, the body, the created author ID, and username. And that's going to come from our post when we post up, if that exists, right? So we do a fetch all for everything this user created. We want to pull all the information out of the database. If there is nothing, we return nothing. But at least we're going to fetch all of the results that we have in the database. So that's a little bit different than what we've done in the other ones. And then in our return, we're going to render a template, which we are calling blog/index.html. This post equals post is just passing on everything we got from the database. And that's going to go to our template. And remember, in our template, we can reference this variable name post in order to pull all that information out. And it should come in as a dictionary, which makes it nice and easy for us to use. So let me put an enter in there. That should fix a little squiggly. Great. And we need to create our HTML file. So under templates, and this time we need to create a blog folder. So let's go new directory blog. And inside there, we're going to create our index.html. All right. And we'll go ahead and add this in there as well. We're going to copy in these contents. Again, the goal here is that once you get through this tutorial, you guys will be set up for your mini project 3 and getting about 70% of the way done. There'll be some other things you'll need to add to it, but all the structure, everything else will be there. You can just update the structure to match your project. So if we look at this HTML file, it's going to extend our base that we already had set up. We're going to set up our post as our title, and we are going to have the URL for blog.create. So if we click this new button at the top, it's going to allow us to create a new blog. We also have a section down here for content and for posts and posts, meaning, notice this is a for loop through our variable posts, that for every one of those that returned out of the database, we're going to use this HTML content. So we don't have to create one of those for every single blog post. We can use a simple for loop, and it's going to do that automatically for us. So then for each one of those, we're going to grab the username out of the post dictionary, the created. We're going to take the time and we're going to organize that. Notice that we can use Python code directly in our HTML as long as it's inside 2 curly braces. We can do Python commands. All right. We also have the button here for updating the post if we are that user. So if we're logged in as a different user and we're looking for those, we may be able to update those, but if we're a different user, we cannot. And then from down at the bottom, if we get the last one, we go ahead and set a header and then add our block. So that looks really well. Now what we need to do is create a route to go for this blog create, right? So we have our index, that's all looking good. We need to go ahead and create the section for us to actually create a blog. So let's go back to our blog. Come back down here, make sure you give 2 spaces to meet PEP 8 compliance, and then we'll go ahead and grab this here. So the big change on this one is you look at our decorator, and this is going to be similar to what we were doing with auth, right? So in auth, we had it set up for a get post depending on where they log in. So we have a BP route, get post. In this blog one, we have a get post, but you'll notice this decorator at login required. And so this create page will not be able to be pulled up unless the user is logged in. If they're not logged in, they will automatically get kicked out to our login page so they can log in and actually modify that particular post. Everything else is going to look very similar. We're going to have, if they're posting it, aka submitting the form to us, we'll grab the title and body of it. If they don't give us a title, we'll say title's required. Otherwise, we're going to store that into our database, and then we'll go ahead and render our create.html page. So if we go out to our templates and our blog, we're going to need a create in here. So HTML, this is our create page. Go ahead and add that one. Replace this. Nothing fancy going on here other than we're calling this a new post at the top, and then we are going to just have a simple form that allows them to put in a blog post for us. All right. We now need a page in order to update our blogs. We go back to our blog. We have our index that has everything. We have a create page, and we need an update if they want to modify their blog post. So that would be this one here. Right. Now, the way this get post is doing, this is going to retrieve the thing out of the database. So we're going to retrieve our database here. But we're going to notice here, if the author ID doesn't match, we abort with a 403 saying we're not authorized. Remember, 403 in HTML is not authorized. If we cannot find a post, because of the way we create this post, it is /blog/ whatever the ID of the post is. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever's in there. If we try to go to something that doesn't exist, we're going to raise a 404 error and say that that particular post ID does not exist. So that's what this code is doing here. We'll come down, and inside our blog, we'll also need to have our update content. So that first one is just to check to see whether or not the ID that they're coming in with is actually a valid ID. And then this one will actually render the template, and that's where you get this ID up here at the top. So when we do post equals get post, that's coming back and fetching this post out of the database. This one here is where we're actually rendering the HTML. So we have our template of update.html. We'll need to create that. HTML update. And out of our update HTML, we can go ahead and copy this content over. And again, nothing super fancy here. We're going to extend our base. We're going to go ahead and call this our edit post. Now, what's handy here is because we already have the post, the name of it, the title, we can directly dynamically build our HTML content based off that information we pulled out of the database. So we pull in our post and we are grabbing the title of that. We can see all the information, the same form. We're going to pre-populate it with whatever was in the database. And then they can modify that, change that, and then you can submit. We also have an on-click to confirm whether or not they're sure they want to update this particular post. So nice little add-on there. And then last but not least, with a blog post, we need to be able to delete it. So if we go to our blog and we add a new function to delete it. There we go. And so if we choose to delete this post, we basically just go to that ID, and inside our update HTML, there was a section to delete it. And so this is the link in order to get us to do that. See that? Here's the section to delete it. So URL for blog delete. There's basically a button there. It says, are you sure you want to delete it? That's that confirm. Are you sure? And then now we just need the URL to actually go and delete that out of the database. So that all looks good. Once they have deleted that out of the database, we are going to redirect them back to our main page, our index page. So that looks great. Let's go ahead and get and commit and push this so we don't lose our changes. And so here we can say added blog functionality through the blog blueprint. Okay. Commit and push that project up. And we'll push. Okay, almost there. Perfect. We got our push. So now we can test our project to make sure everything goes like we would expect it to. So let's load this up here. Just back to our blog and click on our link. And now, instead of failing right away, it takes us to our index page. And we can notice there's no current blogs in the database. We will need to register a user account. So let's go ahead and do that. Just throw in one here. And we can see that JL Zeller is already registered in the system. I actually don't remember what I set for that password from the other day. So we can fix that if we go out here to our database. Right, and I go down to my columns in not post, but in my user columns and ID. Let's go in here. And we can see that first J Zeller entry in there. If I click on that one and hit delete, should be able to delete this one out of here. Let's see, delete. It's not going to let me delete it because I'm actively using it. So let's stop that. Still won't let me delete it. So what we're going to do for the sake of time here, we're just going to delete this database out. So we start from scratch. Yes, training was my password. Thanks, Jan. It's good because it didn't seem like it deleted it like it was supposed to. So let's try this again. JL Zeller, training. And then I killed my website. Let's try this again. Hit play to start it up again. There we go. And continue, get us back to the website. There we go. So now we're going to go to login. JL Zeller, training. My fingers are going to do. It's probably my special training password. Nope, that doesn't seem to be working either. I must have set it to something goofy. Let's just register a new account. So let's call this our SAM account, and SAM is going to have netlab123. There we go. And now I can log in with that SAM account, SAM. Okay, so now that I'm in, notice that I'm logged in, this new button popped up. This would not show up unless we were logged in into the total account. You'll notice that once we got logged in, this now has the option for log out, and it's going to display the username up here at the top. All of that functionality is built into the HTML template. So let me just open this to where we can actually see everything again. Get this back over. And in this, it's actually in our base HTML. There you go. And this is at the top, right? So we're going to show the username unless there is no user, right? So if G user, show the username, show logout. If there is no user logged in, then we're going to show register and login, and then end our if. So all this dynamically changes based off of whether the user is logged in or not. Same way on this index, if we look here, and we look at the username, so we can show this username posted here. If G user ID equals post ID, then we would show those out. We don't really have any. So we're going to click new to create our new post. And we get this simple little template here. And this will be my first post. And we can throw in some content inside our body, hit save. And now in our main index page, we can see my first post, and we can see that go out here. If I wanted to edit that one, notice that we're saving that URL time. That's what this is here, where I grab the time, and when it stored that time in the database, we can go ahead and pull that back out. If you wanted to format this differently, you would just adjust this. So if you wanted to go month, day, year, you would just tweak this around. We can go to edit, and we can edit the post. So instead of these, let's do these. Hit save, and it has updated our post. We can also edit, and down here you will see that button for delete. And if we hit delete, notice how we got a pop-up here that says, are you sure? That was based off of our HTML for the update. So there's that one, and there you go. Here's our pop-up. On click, do a return, confirm, are you sure? We hit OK, and that blog post is out of the database. If we did another one real quick, just to demonstrate, we hit save. We actually come over here and open up our database and go to our post table, columns, and ID. We can see that we actually have ID number 2 for this particular post. And we can see when it was created, the title, the body, author ID is 3. Remember that that is set to a foreign key back to our user database. So if we go here, 3 relates to Sam, and then we can pull the password out and stuff like that. So that's how that all ties together. That's how your database ties together. That's how your views tie everything together, which is your blog. So your blog one is your views associated with the blog. You have your auth, which is everything associated with authentication. Those are called blueprints. So we have these 2 blueprints. And with each one of those, you have individual views. So this chunk here is called a view. And that is what controls what's happening on that website. So when you're on that web page, and you submit or anything like that. If you're not submitting anything, then we return a particular HTML file, like this one here is for register. If we are hitting send or submit on the post on the page, then we're going to go ahead and execute this code. So sanitizing the input, making sure it's all valid. If it's not valid, kick them out with an error. If it is valid, then we're going to go ahead and start executing right into our database and committing those changes. So lots of moving parts, but there's an easy way to kind of step through that and figure out how to make them work at that point with Flask. So we're a little far from done, as the tutorial will explain. So if we go back to our tutorial, our work site, website, everything works at this point. So this would be a good time to make sure you submit this up to GitHub, and this will get you your quote 70%. Now, when you get to this part, the next one is going to be for making the project installable. We're not actually worried about this. This would be if you want to have somebody be able to do pip install and then whatever your project name is. If they were using it as a third-party project, or maybe you submitted this up to PyPy, what is it, PyPy, PYPI, and that is the storage for all pip packages. You could do that, and you can pip all this kind of stuff into. We're going to skip over this section because we're not actually going to make it available for other people to install in our particular realm. Right now, we just have them check out your GitHub content, and that's our goal, is to have them use the GitHub page. The next section here is going to talk about test coverage. And so what's nice about test coverages, and you should do this if you were doing this in long-term production, the idea is that you can have a SQL entry like this where it inserts test data into your application, and then it goes through and tries to do a bunch of the different tests. So it tries to add a user, it tries to gather their post information, it tries to grab all the other stuff that's in there. And so it basically generates some fake data for you to test and make sure that all pieces of your application are working. There again, I'm not going to go too much into this test data stuff. If you were going to do this long-term and such, you should definitely do this, but we have so many other topics to cover here. So I want to make sure that's through there. This last section here about factory is done with your test config. And again, this is so that you can use your test factory, come in here, assert whether or not this app is working, and you can get a response page out of it. Down here at the bottom, we have getDB and the tests. Again, this is all associated with testing all the way through. All right. We're going to ignore that and go to the deploy to production state. So this is how you would build out your wheel after you packaged and built everything out. You could build out secret keys and then run this on a full-blown production server. They're using what's called Waitress here. Waitress is used for serving up a WSGI server. So if you wanted to put this in full-blown production, note that when we hit play here, we are actually running those command line commands of, pull that up in our README. We have our Flask app run, and this is how you would execute your command. If you wanted to do this in full-blown production, like say I want to deploy this out to DigitalOcean or something like that, you have to have some kind of web server in the front. This is just a development web server that's running itself. So Waitress is going to be a way of deploying the WSGI and making sure that you have security enabled for all of that. Some will use this Waitress. G-Unicorn is a popular one that's used. That's what we'll use within Django. There's a couple other packages. And then you could also hide this behind like an Nginx server, and it would actually serve up your website from that point on. So you run this, and then it gets redirected and hidden behind a Nginx so that you can actually secure this. Because notice when we go to this page, nothing is HTTPS, right? We're not having a certificate. It's not signed. You would want to serve that behind a Nginx server that is doing all that SSL redirection for you at this point. So Waitress serve, again, this is just going to show you how it goes. And then the last step here, keep developing, is just going to tell you other things you can do. And so this leads us into what our mini project would be. Is, you know, here they want you to go into the detail view to show a post, maybe able to click that title page to go back to it directly. Maybe you want to add the features of liking and unliking a post, the ability to add comments, do a page display. If they have more than 5 posts, you do only 5 on the display. All of these things you can actually do to tweak your program and make it really cool. So with our mini project 3, let's go back out to those requirements. What I require in mini project 3 is that you set up a proper folder structure, use the tutorial as an example. So we have all of that, meaning that you need to have your overall app over here, which is your Flask project. You need to have your static set up correctly for your CSS. You need to have your templates and the templates folder with the individual blueprints spaced out and make sure everything trails out exactly in the structure. And then in here, you have your init file along with your auth and blog and your database file set up along with your schema file so that it automatically sets up your database. All right. And so in mini project 3, what I'm looking for you to do is deploy some kind of Flask website of your choice. The goal here is to come up with some kind of small web application that meets any of these requirements below. Again, most of this you're already going to have. So you need a minimum of 5 pages with a proper structure. If you look at what you have in here, you have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So technically you have everything if you're doing a blog, but if you want to adjust blog into something else, say you want to generate multiple pages or whatever concept you come up with to deploy for this little mini project website, you can use this as a template on how to add, remove, update, that kind of stuff. Do this, the standard CRUD movements. So create, remove, update, and delete. That's CRUD. And then you need to have at least one page that utilizes a form and has a proper get and post route set up. That's kind of what I wanted you to do outside of login. So in our auth section here, if we go look at register, we have a get post. If it is a post, do this stuff. If it's a get, go ahead and render the template. So a lot of this project is already done within the tutorial, but I want you to go one step further and make sure it works. You'll also need to set up a SQLite database with a minimum of 2 tables linked with a foreign key. Again, the tutorial has something like that with blog. So what I'm really looking for you to do is create something other than a blog that would use this same format. You can use this same template in order to set those across. You can set up your schema where when they log in, they have access to create something other than posts. Maybe it's storing movies or storing your favorite books or something like that. Similar to what we did in the INF601 class when we came up with very simple projects. You're just going to take that one step further and make it web-based now. Let's see here. You need to use Bootstrap in your web templates. I don't really dictate which modules you need to use, but you need to make use of at least a modal. So if you go out here to Bootstrap, and we talked about Bootstrap in the past, actually it's Get Bootstrap. Oh, there we go. And you can go out to the documentation for Bootstrap, and you can see all these different things that you can do with that. What I'm wanting you to do is use at least a modal in your stuff. So let's go through here and find our component, and you're going to see a modal. And a modal, if we scroll down here and look at an example, is a pop-up that looks like this. So if you remember on that on delete, that was just a simple JavaScript on the page that made it come up and pop up there. What we want to do is use something code-wise that looks like this. So you can copy this example out. When you have a live demo, it looks something like this. So I click this, notice how it did a nice little drop down and in a clean box. This looks better than the one that's actually in our page when you actually go to delete. So if I come in here, edit, oh, my website's down. Give me a second here. Power it back up. And let's go back. There's our update. We hit delete. This is just a simple JavaScript that pops up. Now, obviously, they look very similar between the two, but this one looks much cleaner overall. And you could add some extra stuff in here or whatever else you want to do. To make that work, again, you can copy and paste this code out and then use that in there and change, you know, obviously the modal title, the save changes, close, whatever else you want inside that modal. So you may want it when you come out here to the main web page. Let's go back to our main login. Just go to the index. Instead of having this where you can't see anything, you may want it to where I can click on this and it pops up in a modal with all the information about that particular blog post. and then we would see it out in the center. So that's one way to use a modal. There's a couple different ways. For example, if you come back here to the log out, and then if you click log in, instead of showing me this form, it could pop up into a modal so that I would pop up and log in, just like you guys have done on multiple other websites that are out there. So feel free to use Bootstrap. What I encourage you to do here is use ChatGPT in order to help you organize your file. So if you say, I would really like to add a carousel to the top of this particular page, how would I do that? And if you tell it to use Bootstrap 5, it will tell you all the steps on how to add a carousel in there. So what's a carousel? This is where you can have like a slideshow at the top, and that way you could move it through. That's a good example. You could also have it where you have the indicators as to which one you're on. So this one has the little indicators. You could have it with captions. So first slide, second slide, third slide. Lots of cool options you can do. You can fade between the two, so it looks like this as opposed to sliding. There's an accordion up here, which might be nice for your blog posts. So what that looks like is you have this accordion that goes down. If I click the down arrow, it gives me whatever information's in that. Well, we could change our blog post at this login page. So let me log in here for Sam. Instead of having each blog post go down, so let's create a couple more so we can see what it looks like. So you can see we get two of these. Instead of having edit and all this pop up right away, maybe you want to set this up as an accordion so that when I click the down arrow, then I see the content of the blogs. And that way I just see the titles of everything, and I want to click on that one for more information. It's another way to use something out of Bootstrap. And it's really easy to set up. You just copy this part of it out, and you can see in here when it's activated. So where you have accordion item 1, this is where you would plug in the code for your blog post. So if we look at this part, let's go look at our existing template for index. And right here is where you have the information about the user and the time. We would steal this piece here, right? Because that's what we're posting into there. We would copy that. And if we go out to our Bootstrap, that's where you would paste that into this code. So you just take this out, paste in exactly that piece, and it would put that at the top. And you could do the same thing. Here is the body of the accordion. This is where you would put the post data. So if we come in here, and you could see this is the time. If the user is logged in, we can grab the body of the post, which is this right here. So P class body, just grab your post body section, and then come in here into this type of code and put that into this body section here, accordion body. So really easy to tweak it, make it look really cool. You can do some other ones. This one flushes, so you can see where it actually highlights it around the edge, so you know which one you're actually clicked on. You could always have one of those first ones open, so you can make the first blog post always open. We cannot close, or you can close it, but it's always open when they first come up. You could add some other CSS and other content. So lots of cool things. The whole goal here is you take it from a very generic CSS styling that we did here and use some Bootstrap to make it fancy. That's the gist of it. All right. Let's see, Jan, do you have any questions on the mini project and where we go from there? Okay. So the only other things that you have here, you need to have some sort of register and login system. Again, you guys already have that. So you can tweak that. Maybe instead of just taking a username and password, maybe you want them to register with a date of birth or something like that because you want to use that information, build out kind of a profile. You could do that. Again, ChatGPT is your friend on saying, hey, I would like to tweak this registration login to do more of a user profile, and it will help you walk you through those steps. You should have 5 commits on your project, and I'll be checking out that master branch again. Make sure you do all your pip requirements. So now that you have everything up, you pip freeze and go in. And then for your README section of it, you need to make sure you copy out the README template. I specifically want to know the commands to run your app. So if you go back here and look at my README, these two should be in the setup section of the README template. And if you don't remember where the README template is, you go back out to our learning modules. There we go. We come out here to our GitHub tips and tricks, and you grab this README template in this section here where it says installing and executing. You would want to make sure that you put these two in those comments there. So 1, to initiate setting up the database, and 2, being able to run the application. Because the user, the first time they check this out from GitHub, are going to need to do this kind of thing. Just to clean this back up here. Notice this again. I'm going to go through and fix those, but this would be a good time to fix this one. And let's edit this. And instead of master, we're using the main branch. Again, they updated all that here recently. So let's submit that. Okay. If you need some other help or walkthrough on these, there are some old videos out there. Definitely use this video here. Let's see, you have your tutorial. You have a link out here for Jenga templates if you need more information there. This here, if you choose to use Flask in your final project, or you're thinking you kind of like this one, obviously you don't know yet, you haven't had a chance to use Django, but if you need more help on Flask itself, or you are looking for some more information, there's a really cheap and easy Udemy course that's out here on Flask. It's one I totally recommend if you're wanting to learn more about Flask and move forward. I believe it's usually, depending on the time of day you get in there, it could be $12, $13, something like that. But the instructor is very, very clear and concise in his words. A lot of times people struggle listening to some Udemy professors that are out there. This one is very clear, and it gives you some nice projects, things to work along, especially if you're wanting to do a whole lot of tweaks in Flask and you wanted to do some cool stuff. ChatGPT is obviously the best way to do that now because it's all kind of built into that. But this is a great little add-on course. You do not need to pay for it. It's just supplemental. All right. So I will get this portion out of here. I'll remove these because you guys won't see those. And I'll move those over to the old videos, and then you'll see this video that we just recorded inside here. But that should get you set up for your mini project. Once again, the mini project isn't officially due on Sunday. I just want to have your GitHub URL in there. I will make sure I go back and get all of your other stuff graded here. That's actually on my Sunday to-do list this week, to kind of get all of that posted in, and that way you guys get some grades and some feedback on the stuff you have in there. All right, stop the recording.